Good morning. It's a joy to be with you this morning, and nice to see so many of you here. It's very exciting. Our reading this morning comes from the Reverend Dr. Patrick O'Neill. Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes of Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn the traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors, Kasirian Ingira, one would always say to another. It means, "And how are the children?" It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always place on their children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, "All the children are well." Meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevail, that the priorities of protecting the young, the powerless are in place, that Maasai society has not forgotten its reasons for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles of existence do not preclude proper caring for their young. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this daily question, "And how are the children?" I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other a dozen times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how children are thought of or cared for in our own country, our own community. I wonder if every adult among us, parent and non-parent alike, felt an equal weight for the daily care and protection of all children in our community, in our town and state, in our country. I wonder if we could truly say without any hesitation, "The children are well." Yes, all the children are well. What would it be like if religious leaders began every worship service by answering the question, "And how are the children?" If teachers began every class by answering the question, "And how are the children?" If every town leader had to answer the same question at the beginning of every meeting, "And how are the children? Are they all well?" If every business leader and corporate executive had to answer the same question at the beginning of every workday, "And how are the children? Are they all well?" Wouldn't it be interesting to hear their answers? What would it be like? I wonder. Let's begin here and greet members and friends in our Unitarian Universalist congregation with, "And how are the children?" And before we can respond to one another, "All the children are well," what actions must we take in this congregation, in our community, in our state, and our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations in our country? And how are the children? Working together, may all our children be well. Words from the Reverend Patrick O'Neill.
She who is alone knew what she had to do. She was just a child, yet she knew what she had to do. While the adults bickered among themselves, she knew what she had to do. While the grown-ups selfishly clung to their bows and arrows and blankets, she knew what she had to do. Her doll was the only thing that she owned. Her doll was her only connection to her mother and her father, to her grandparents, to her past, and really her identity. Her doll was her lifeline, and yet she knew what she had to do. Do you believe that a child can save a tribe? Do you believe that a child can lead a people out of drought and darkness? Do you believe that a child can show us all the way? The song the chorus just sang was "Teach your children well," and that we certainly must do. But this story tells us that it is the children, perhaps just one child, who will teach us all so much. And how are the children? And how are the children? The mighty Maasai warriors of Africa remind themselves constantly that children stand at the center of their lives. It's okay. Nora can stand up here. They remind themselves that how we treat our children shows what we value most. That, as Reverend Patrick O'Neill puts it, the priorities of protecting the young and the powerless are in place. That society has not forgotten its reasons for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. After all, isn't that what a community is for? To protect the young and the powerless? If a Maasai warrior were to walk in these doors right now and ask us, "And how are the children?" how might we answer? How might we answer? We know that children in the world are suffering from war and poverty, from famine and disease. We know that children in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are attending schools that are overcrowded and under-resourced. We know that children in our own neighborhoods go to bed at night hungry. We might make an excuse to that warrior that, well, we really can't change those things. They're too big for us to make a difference. So what if the tribesmen were to ask us, "And how are the children of this community, of this congregation?" How would we answer? Would we be able to look him in the eye and say with confidence and complete honesty that we keep our children at the center of our community? That our children, our church revolves around them, around our children? I wonder what it would mean for us as a congregation to put children at the center of our lives. What would our church look like? I envision a congregation where we welcome children as warmly as we adults welcome each other. Where adults who are not their parents know the names of the children and actually have relationships with them. Where children are not just a distraction during coffee hour, but are invited to be a part of the conversation. Where the grown-ups look forward to seeing the kids and vice versa. A church that puts its children at the center of its life has programming that takes children into account, not just to make sure that there's childcare available while we do what we want to do as grown-ups, but that it's adapted for age-appropriate activities and participation. Such a church would have members who wouldn't give the evil eye to the parents of squirmy toddlers during a worship service, but instead people who go over and offer to cuddle and comfort that child, to give the parent a break because they know and trust each other. Could you imagine that? Such a church would have youth who are visible and present instead of appearing only on Sunday nights or for soup lunches. Which is why I'm happy to have two of our youth serving as worship associates this year, Riley and Marjorie. And we're adding a member of our youth group to our pastoral care associates too. Where's Dimitri? He's out doing something. Such a church would never have to beg, listen to this, such a church that put children at its center would never have to beg people to serve as classroom teachers and assistants. It would have a waiting list of all the volunteers who wanted to serve and lead and teach and guide and mentor our children. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Think how much more vibrant our programming could be were we to have parents and non-parents alike begging to teach our children. Were our DRE not to have to spend the bulk of her time calling for and cajoling volunteers in an endless hunt for classroom help. Could you imagine? A congregation that puts children and youth at its center would also reach out into the wider community to support children and youth beyond our walls. Our social justice and social action activities would emphasize the health and well-being of our most vulnerable. We would have multiple outreach programs supporting children in underserved parts of Delaware County. We'd have members volunteering in after-school programs, mentoring programs for parents. We'd have children from the larger community coming to our picnics and programs, and we'd be going to theirs. How rich that would be. We'd have real relationships with families who were different from us, from whom we could learn and grow. This is my vision of our community. This is my vision. It is heart-centered, and at its very core are the children. This is our congregation. And you heard the chorus sing earlier today, draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. And so our congregation grows wider. We draw the circle wider still, but still at its core, at its center, are love and children. And how are the children? As we embark on a new year, let this be the question that we ask ourselves. And may we, throughout the year, strive to do what is needed to be able to respond, and all the children are well. Blessed be. Amen.